What's going on, guys? It's your boy Big D here, and today I'll be bringing you my bubble list from the Mystic TCG Great Pirate Festival. So if you guys don't know what that is an event that my locals in St. Louis, Mystic TCG, holds once per set. They started this last set, so if you guys want to check that out, please look out on their website for the signups. Overall, the event went decent for me. We ended X3, which got us to 33rd, just outside the top 32, which kind of hurts a little bit, but you know that just means that we're getting the results that we wanted. All that hard work and testing for the last 2.5 months was worth it. Matchups from the event were right out of the gate. We had a Katakuri mirror. Double Linlin in the mirror is very strong. And when you go from 3 life back to 5 life and your opponent can't really take the life, you just kind of win from there. Round 2 was Film Kid. We only really needed 110 drop in that matchup. He never saw any of his blockers, so we really didn't have to go too wide to get over the blockers. Round 3, we lost to Zoro. It's a hard matchup. We did lose to what is an unfortunate bad decision. I had 2 10-drop Linlins, and if I had went back-to-back on the Linlins, I would have won that game. But there's no way to know that in the heat of the moment. And when you're looking at the board, sometimes you overthink things, and that's what happened to me. I just overthought it and lost. Round 4 was a Katakuri mirror that I lost. He saw his 10 drops. I didn't. That just boiled down to the mirror. He high rolled me, got the curve, and he won from there by playing the 10 drop on curve. Round 5 was another Katakuri mirror. We low rolled, we got the even curve, but we were able to double to 7 lin and then double 10 lin to get the win. Next up was a black yellow big mom for round 6, which we won that. Playing into a Katakuri with a 4 life leader just isn't great unless you're Law. And that's just because Law plays a ton of blockers and we have to go wide to get those blockers off the board. But once we get those blockers off the board, if they can't replenish the blockers and they don't have board presence, then you're pretty solid. For Black Yellow Big Mom, he didn't have any of the blockers. His 7 lin didn't stick, and my 7 lin Katakuri and 10 lin did. And then last round, which was round 7, we lost to Film Kid. We had a 1-1 split against Film Kid, so I am really happy with those results. But I just wish I could have got that last win in. Sawtooth 10 lin was unable to go back-to-back because the second one came too late. But overall, I think the deck performed very well. I'm very happy with my performance. I do think that there are some things that we can improve on as far as decision making goes, but the list overall was just really solid. Hey guys, let's hop on into this list. So everybody knows what the leader does. Katakuri is just a really solid leader, being able to look at both players' lives, being able to order triggers. I particularly like ordering my triggers over my opponent's triggers because I pretty much don't care what they get out of life, because most times when you play into red, their jet pistols are dead. Because most of your stuff is just too big for them to jet pistol unless they have an Otama in hand. So the triggers out of life really don't matter as much. So starting off with the first card, we play 4 copies of Pudding. She's your 1-drop searcher. She only looks at the top 4 and not the top 5, so that is very important to remember. But the cards that she searches are very powerful. She's really good into the green matchup, because if they play a Bonnie and they leave the Bonnie unprotected, you just swing into it for free with the Pudding, and you don't have to invest any Don into that swing, which is really nice. Next up, we play 4 Straussen. So Straussen never really hits the board. I think I played it once or twice. I played it against the first Film Kid guy, and then I played it against the Zoro player. He's just really good for getting the one drops off the board, specifically the searchers, or in Red's case, any of the 3Ks that can become swingers with one Don. Other than that, he's really only used for a 2K. Next up, I played for Sanji. Sanji is the 2K that I play the most. Sanji is just really good because you play him going first on your turn, or not going first. Going first, you play him on your second turn. Going second, you play him on your first turn, and then you're able to draw a card as long as he's alive. Because he takes the top card of your life, or the top or bottom of your life, and then he replaces it with something else. So knowing the top and bottom of your life is kind of important, because if you put a 2K at the bottom of your life and you need a 2K, you can just take that 2K off the bottom and then replace the top life with it, a new card. Next up, we played for Pudding. Pudding is here literally just because she's a 2K. That is the only reason. She never touches the board. Yeah, that's pretty much it for this card. Next up, we played 4 copies of Peril Sparrow. Peril Sparrow's trigger to discard and play this card is actually really good, especially if you get them off out of life relatively early. I typically discard Peril Sparrows for Peril Sparrows out of life because it essentially replaces the body that I was going to play the following turn with a body that's able to attack that current turn. And then his KO effect is one of the best effects in your deck. On KO, he looks at the top 3 cards for a Big Mom Pirates card, so he can replace himself with another copy. He can also search out all of your 2Ks that are not named Sanji. He searches out your blocker if you need it, or a 10 drop. Just a really solid card overall. Next up, I played 4 copies of Brulee. I know a lot of lists out there are cutting this card down to 3 or 2, but I like the 4 because of the trigger. Being able to stack this at the bottom of your life, and then your last life throws your opponent's math off because they don't know, but you know, is very powerful. Just because if your opponent has 3 swings, you have 2 life, you take 1, take the second life, and then you play the Brulee, that automatically makes their next card or their next swing dead. So they have to kind of change plan, and then they have to do something else with the remaining Don that they have, because if they were to go big into a Brulee, you're just going to block it and keep going. Next up is a card that I recently added to my list, or added back into my list. I was having some troubles with Whitebeard, and that was because I was unable to get a card that sticks on the board longer than 1 turn. So we ended up playing for Charlotte Opera. Typically, I've seen most lists only play 3 of this card, or maybe 2, or they play like a 2-2 split with another 4-6, or they'll play like Peckhams alongside it. I just thought that having the 4-6 was better than having a 3-5, because the 4-6 sticks when you play into Whitebeard. It sticks when you play into Zoro, and it sticks when you play into Ace, which are the most represented decks in my area. And I think that having this 4-6 is very important, because most of the red decks are switching off of Jet Pistol into Fire Fist, because Fire Fist gets rid of 2 cards instead of 1. And with that being said, they lose 1K on the effect when they go Fire Fist. So they would have to burn an Otama and the Fire Fist in order to get this card off the board. Whereas with the Jet Pistol, you have the singular removal to get this 4-6 off the board. But since they're more focused on, the red mirrors, where they have Marcos and Marco, the 4-5 Marco blocker, and then the 5-6 Marco, and they want to get those cards off the board as much as possible. This card just sticks a lot more than it would have in previous formats. Next up, we play for Charlotte Cracker. His effect never really came up for me, so I never really got the double attack off. I never got the plus 1K. He was pretty much just a 4/5 attacker. His trigger is also solid, being able to discard a card to play it from life. Is very strong because you can cycle out all of the dead cards in your hand um, early and get an attacker. But yeah, it's a solid card. It's a 4/5 attacker, so uh, you pretty much got to play it, and it performed very well for what it's worth. Next up, I play 2 Charlotte Smoothie. I've seen a lot of people go up to 3 on this card, but I prefer 2 just because I don't like the effect to take a life to give it plus 2K. I pretty much only use that effect when I'm going for game, or if I'm so far ahead that it doesn't matter that I take the life early. And her trigger is another solid trigger with discard a card, play this card. Next up, we play 3 copies of Shirahoshi. I only played 3 because I wanted to make room for the Charlotte Operas. And having a 5/0 that's graceful, essentially just a graceful charity or draw 3, trash 2, is really good. But because it has no cost or no power, it's pretty much just a target sitting there, and your opponent is pretty much going to keep it there. Now, it does combo very well with the 8-drop, but that's about it. You rather hit it out of life than play it on curve with the 5. Sometimes I use it as a bridge card. If I'm ahead going first, I'll play it to cycle cards to see if I can hit a 10 land if I don't have it, or a 7 land, or a Katakuri. But playing 4 copies, most times I found out that like the 4 were too bricky, and I was holding on to a 1K counter instead of having another card that did something, or another attacker. Next up, we play 3 7 lens. The 7-drop is really good when you're going first, because your going first curve is much weaker than your going second curve. This deck really wants to go second, so if you can high roll, you always choose to go second no matter the deck. And this is just pretty much a bridge between your 7 or 9 Don turn into your 10 Don turn. Next up, I played 2 copies of Charlotte Katakuri. I only played 2 because, again, my even curve is much better than my odd curve, so I wanted to make sure I had some cards in there that can bridge the gaps in my odd curve. And Charlotte Katakuri is just insanely good, but it's also a 8/4/8 with no combo, so you're pretty much only playing this to regain a life. I use this all the time with Brulees and Shirahoshis. So if I'm ahead, or if I'm starting to get behind, or I feel like I'm getting behind, I'll drop the 8-drop. I'll put the Brule, if I have one, at the bottom of my life. So when my opponent goes to attack that final life, I know that it's a Brule. They know it's a Brule, and it comes out of life. Or I put a Shirahoshi at the top of my life, and then I'll take the next life on purpose, just so I can cycle cards and get more, and draw into more 2Ks and events. And next up, the whole reason that we play this deck is for Charlotte Leland. So this card is insanely good. It takes the choosing aspect of the 7 land out of it, and you just gain a life. Your opponent trashes a life. It makes it's so good that it makes the game unfair if you can go back to back 10 drops. It's almost like last format where Whitebeard or Zoro or Luffy would go back to back 9 drops and then just apply massive pressure to your opponent. That's essentially what the 10 drop does here. She puts massive pressure onto your opponent once you drop her, especially if they're in that 2 to 3 life range, where you can just go swing with all of your small stuff first, force them to combo out, drop the 10, force them to lose a life, and then again swing into either board or life to force out combo, swing a 12, make them take a life, and then go 10 again to burn the last life if they're at 3, or if they're at 1 after being 10 dropped the last time. I typically will just go 10 drop, swing 12 in the life, and see if it sticks. If they have a blocker up, then yeah, I'll swing 12, force the blocker, and then swing 5s to see what sticks, or if I can get that last damage in. Next up, we played 2 Thunderbolt. I wanted to play more copies, but I needed to make room for the Charlotte Operas, so I cut it down to 2. I didn't use this card much. I used it out of life once, and all the other times where I had it in hand where I could have used it, I didn't need it because I was so far ahead that it didn't warrant me trashing a life to pop a character. And then lastly, we played 2 copies of Ikoku Sovereignty. Out of life, this card is insane. Just being able to discard 2 cards to regain a life is massive. The plus 5k counter is really good as well. It's really good at protecting like your 10 lands when your opponent goes 15 or 16 into her. It's really good for protecting like the 8 drop and the 7 drop when your opponent's swinging 11 or 12, 8 or 11 or 12 into it. So yeah, I mean, it's just a really solid card overall. The only thing that sucks is once you get to 10 Don, if you haven't used it before, you're not going to have Don that turn. So you pretty much have a dead card. Usually when that happens, if I get a trigger where it says discard a card to play a card, to play this card, then I'll just discard this. Because if I'm dropping 10 drops, that either means I'm so far ahead that it doesn't matter, or I'm so desperate for a life that it doesn't matter. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys found this video enjoyable and very informative. This is my list that I took to the Great Pirate Festival. Just again, if you guys have any changes or any suggestions of what I should do next as far as this deck goes, or if there's any other deck that you'd like to see me cover or try or play, please leave those down in the comments. And thank you guys for watching. Peace.